This is Cal Dodd, the voice of Wolverine from the X-Men. And if you know what's good for you, you'll start watching Bite-Sized Geek, bub.
What's up, nerds? I'm sitting here with Cal Dodd, the voice of Wolverine from the 90s X-Men animated series. How are you, Cal?
Fine, but I've lost a claw somewhere.
Yeah, I think you left the other one downstairs.
Oh, sure, now it's my fault.
Well,
It's always my fault, bub.
so let's start off with, when did you get into voice acting? Or, I'm sorry, how did you get into voice acting?
By accident. Because I was a singer for years and years.
Right.
Came to Toronto in 1972 and instantly became one of their top singers in not only the city, but singing commercials, jingles, which are called the commercials, the singing jingles. 2 scoops of raisins in a package of Kellogg's raisins, cereals, bras, beer, anything. And got paid for doing that. It was just fantastic. So. That was fun, more than fun, because it was my life. I'd been a singer all my life. My whole family were singers. And that's all I did, was just go to work every day and sing about whatever. And then I landed a TV show from 78 to 83 for 5 years called Circus that was syndicated worldwide. Leslie Nielsen did the pilot with us for that show, and then he disappeared. And we were like, myself and a girl like Donnie and Marie Osmond. And circus acts, humongous trapeze, elephants, clown, everything, lion tamers and stuff in a studio in Toronto. And it was a hugely successful show, but it was also it was an hour show, and it was full of singing. We had 6 dancers on the show. We did production numbers, rock and roll production numbers, of blues, country, so every kind of music. Which was I'm comfortable with all that anyway. I sang from the age of 5 at funerals and weddings, Ave Maria and those, in Latin, all those tunes.
Right.
My mother was a beautiful singer and a music teacher. So that's all. I was very happy doing just that. And then I joined did a theater for 2 years playing Hamlet in a rock opera of Hamlet that ended up going. I got my little brother Rory into it. He played Horatio, and I was Hamlet. And Rory, literally, I took him out of our little town. We were brought up in Port Dover, Ontario, Canada, on Lake Erie. Fishing town, the largest inland lake fishing fleet in the world is in that little town. We came directly from Ireland to Port Dover and lived there all the rest of our lives. Like, I'm still here, but I'm now in Toronto. And Rory went to New York with the show. I went to New York and decided not to do the show. I was going to do a rock band thing that I was entertaining in my head, and they picked 3 singers from Canada to replace the 3 singers from Three Dog Night. That terrific group.
Right.
And when they folded, the record label said, "Oh, we're losing a lot of money here," because there was a great band and one of my favorites. So we did that, and we signed the deal, largest ever signed in Canada for an unknown. We were unknowns. We rehearsed for 8 months. Under the table, like in a little studio somewhere in Toronto on Spadina Avenue for 8 months. And then boom, we went and recorded the album, our first album, signed the deal, first of all, the largest deal ever signed for an unknown group, ever, by capital EMI, worldwide. And we went to New York to record it, which was wonderful because my brother was there anyway, he stayed with the rock opera, which became Rockabye Hamlet. In Canada, it was called Kronberg 1582, which was the name of the castle where Hamlet lived and everything took place. So Rory went with it with Beverly D'Angelo, who became, of course, a big star. And she was in that Ophelia, as she was in Canada. They stayed with that. It was over. Rory met, of course, who else was in the cast but Alan Ade, Meatloaf.
Oh, right,
was in the cast playing a bishop or something. 3 years before it was going to become Meatloaf, the rock group with Jim Steinman. Rory met them. Rory started doing all the, all the demos for Jim Steinman whenever he was write something new for either Meatloaf, Bonnie Tyler, all that kind of stuff. Rory did all that with him and toured with Meatloaf, was one of the background singers. There was 2 boys mainly Rory and a girl that sang the backup stuff. We're gonna go all the way tonight. We're gonna go all the way tonight. We're gonna go all the way tonight. You know, that kind of stuff. And then he sang backups for Billy Joel, Uptown Girl, you believe. You know, Rory did it. Nah, all the intro stuff, all the background stuff for that. Sang on James Taylor's albums. So he's in one night and it's 2 a.m. and they're in a studio in New York. And Jim says, Rory, he's working with Jim again, doing demos. And just as Rory's leaving, they call Rory Ice because he was from Canada. Ice, I get it. Would you mind doing this song? Rory said, what? Jim, it's 2 a.m. I got to get home. You know, New York City. Imagine leaving at 2 a.m. Anyway, he said, I gotta go. He said, it'll only take you 15, 20 minutes, Simon said. And Rory said, what's it for? He said, well, I'm doing this record with Bonnie Tyler. So Rory says, okay. So he sang it and he went home. And about, 10 months later, he's on the Grammys with Bonnie Tyler. And he starts at the back of the stage at the Grammy Awards because it won Record of the Year.
Right.
And this song is, turn around, every now and then I get it, turn around, right eyes. That's my little brother, Rory. So singing was all our life. So back to Toronto. And so I came back I'm sick of the rock and roll thing too. Went back to doing commercials and stuff. And all of a sudden I got this call. I did a commercial for Chrysler. And they wanted me to be, again, just singers. We were there. So they said, wanted someone to play a sergeant. So I said, they said, Cal, can you do the sergeant's part? I said, sure. And all of us was like, who's got all the 4x4s? In that gravelly voice.
Right.
And the rest of them were saying, Chrysler's got the 4x4s, sound up, whatever. A year later, because I was known for my singing and stuff, and they heard that commercial. And this girl, I gotta remember her name. I will.
I hope she's not watching right now.
She phoned me and said, would you be into auditioning for this role in an animated series? And she said, I can't tell you what it is, but it's a Project X. Project X. So I showed up for the thing. And they showed me the picture and told me what he was like. And I said, who does he sound like? I asked who it was. They said, Clint Eastwood. And I went, okay, I get that. And then I put a little bit of Wolfman Jack into my impersonation.
Right.
The voice I came up with, like on the spot like that. And I said, so who's this guy that he's yelling? Because Clint Eastwood would never yell. This line you just gave me has to be yelled, or like at least violent. They said, yeah, he's yelling at Sabretooth. And I don't know anything about X-Men or anything. And I said, in all seriousness, they're all from LA and New York. The writers, the producer, directors. Larry Houston is there,
Right.
I said, Sabretooth, I'm Wolverine? She said, yeah. Is this an animal cartoon? Is this an animal cartoon? They did just what you did. They just couldn't stop laughing.
Right.
And when they did, they said, no. They said, well, and I said, look at the picture. She said, yeah. Well, does that look like an animal to you? Well, in a manner of speaking.
A little bit, yeah.
No, and he said, well, what, Sabretooth, Wolverine? He said, they're both mutants. And I said, what the hell's a mutant?
Yeah.
I had no idea what a mutant was.
Right, like you'd never heard of this stuff before.
No, a mutant. Oh, okay, perfect, now I get it. Not. And so they just said, well, anyway, here's the line, and you hate this guy that with all you and Sabretooth do not get along.
Right.
Every time you meet, it's just for a fight. I said, oh, great. So I sat there for a minute reading this one line, and then I delivered the line, and keep in mind, they're behind the glass. And I said, okay. All right, you egg-sucking piece of gutter trash. You always did like pushing around people shorter than you. Well, I'm shorter. Try pushing me.
All right, you egg-sucking piece of gutter trash. You always liked pushing around people smaller than you. Well, I'm smaller. Try pushing me.
And they just went, oh, shit.
Yeah, right.
Give him more lines. Yeah, give him more lines. So they did. And I sat there for about 15 minutes reading different lines of Wolverines that were about to become famous.
Right.
Just from the writers were brilliant. And I went home and they phoned and said, would you like to be our Wolverine? Because we just loved you in the audition. I said, no, I'll just check my calendar. See if
Right.
I said, of course. Yeah.
Right.
And that was the beginning of 5 years of unbelievable great stuff, and this guy's something else.
Yeah, he is. He is. He was my favorite. So X-Men was one of the cartoons that my dad would watch with me growing up, and
Yeah.
Wolverine was definitely my favorite. I've always connected with those characters that are just more, aggressive
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But I think it's interesting. I was thinking about this not too long ago. You mentioned that you were, a singer before you did voice acting. I was thinking about it. It's interesting that the two men that are known for Wolverine, you and Hugh Jackman, are both singers,
Yeah.
are both performers.
Yeah. I thought of that too.
Yeah, that's just really interesting to me
Yeah.
because I don't, when you think of Wolverine, you don't think of a singer,
No.
performer. So my question,
And when I heard Hugh was, and I actually saw him dancing once on.
right,
Somebody said,
right,
"Don't do that. You don't dance. Do not dance." And it was because Wolverine, he wouldn't be dancing like that. So, yeah.
if Wolverine was a singer, what kind of genre of music do you think he would sing?
The blues.
The blues.
Oh, big time. Big time. Nothing but the blues. There's a song that I sing. We were in, where was I again? Minneapolis. Thank you.
Minneapolis.
And there was a piano there in the room, so I sat down and started playing piano because I know how to do that. And I had learned when the album first came out, I learned all Elton John's. I learned how to play the piano to Elton John's album, like just by taking the record off and on and asking my mother, who was a piano teacher as well. I said, a chord first, third, and fifth. Is that all? She said, yes. I said, okay, thanks. You go now.
Right.
And I figured out the whole thing. And so I sat down at this piano. I haven't played the piano in 5 years. And there were a few cacks and stuff, but I sang your song. It's a little bit funny. And then Holy Moses, or the Border Song it's called. And a couple of Carole King tunes. And then I did the Eric Carmen, because I watched him record it in New York City when we were there, all by myself.
Mm-hmm.
When I was young, I never needed anyone.
Right.
Making love is all by myself. Yeah, that's Wolverine's theme song. Well, they just went nuts. Anyway, all the people from the vendors room and everything, all of a sudden my room where the piano was in was full of people with cameras rolling and stuff. And it was just wonderful.
I could hear that song playing from that scene that you just posted on your social media where Wolverine's holding the picture of that song would
All by
definitely
myself.
be playing during that scene.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing conventions?
We probably started, well, as everyone did, there was like 2 to 3 years off because of COVID.
Right.
And we probably started in 2018.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so 2018, 19, 2020, forget it, because COVID was March
Right.
of 20, and 21, 22. That's when I started in 2018.
Okay. What do you think would be your favorite and least favorite thing about doing conventions?
Well, the fans are my favorite. I just love them. They're just fantastic, and they're so true and so honest, and so much. I mean, every day they come up and say, "Thank you for making my childhood."
Right.
All of them, bar none.
And I'm one of them.
Yeah, no, it's just it seems to be a lot of autistic people that love this show.
Right.
And that came up to me, and there's one particular story in particular, and this kid just this guy just blew me away. He came up to the table, and I had my claws on. He had claws on. He was wearing black robe. Excuse me. And he had this little girl with him who was about 10, and he was about 30. Mm-hmm. And he walked up to the table and he just stopped. Mr. Dodd, I have to thank you for my life, for making my childhood number one, and then for saving my life. Oh, pardon? What? Well, I'm autistic, as is my little girl here. We both have autism, and I was treated so terribly as a kid and picked on, and I didn't think I could go on anymore. I wasn't going to be able to live anymore. He said the only thing that saved me was I knew that you wouldn't do that. Wolverine would not do that. And I knew that if I did that, if I took my own life, I wouldn't see the show on Saturday. He said,
Oh, wow.
I said,
Wow.
What? And he just said, you just give me strength and saved my life and made it possible for my little girl to be here even. I said, oh my God. He finished and I was like, I was like, forget it. I was like, this.
Yeah, right.
And I took my claw off and I put my hand out and he took the claw that he had off and hesitantly put his hand up and shook my hand quickly, and he just said, looked at me and I said, thank you so much. And at that, he put his claw back on, and the two of them just like this and walked away with his black capes flowing as they left. This woman comes running up to my table in tears, and she said, I can't believe what I just saw. That's my husband and my daughter. He has never, ever, because of his autism, ever touched another person's hand.
Oh, wow.
But you put your hand out. She said, this is Wolverine. So he shook my hand.
Right.
That's the impact that the show had on these fans. And they're just so, I just love them. I would do anything, and that's why I go to these things.
Right. Wow.
And the worst part about them is flying.
Flying?
Is airports. Period. No question. Airports and flights or lack thereof.
Right, because you got held up a little bit coming
Cancellations.
here, right? You got held up a little bit coming here,
Yeah, not
right?
much though. This was a dream coming here because we got held up for an hour. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
always for a dumb reason. Like one was like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, you can't close the door of the plane. The main door into the plane, we can't close it. We're looking for someone to help us.
Oh, wow. Well, you don't
I'll
want
help. I'm leaving. I'm getting off.
Yeah.
And the last time too, there was one. Well, we don't have the vehicle that usually pushes us out away from the gate. Oh, please, people, this isn't rocket science. So we have to wait till we can get a few employees to come and do that. That was an hour.
Oh, yeah, that's not too bad.
No, that's all. Everything else ran rather smoothly, but it's just it's nonstop. There's always some problem or some delay. But that's the price you pay. But again, it's the fans I love to death.
When you take on a role or a character, are you normally given some sort? Now, I remember you mentioned with Wolverine, you kind of were given some insight onto who he is, how he should sound. But is that the case with most of the characters that you voice, or do you just have to kind of come up with something on your own?
Yeah, I didn't have any help with Slappy either. It was just, I didn't have any. I think he played me a reference or something, the producer, but he just asked me. I didn't audition for that. He just said, we'd like you to try doing this. Maybe because he was an evil little twerp.
Hey, Amy. Guess who?
Right. Yeah.
And the voice just came.
Must be very nice he had a
So different from Wolverine.
Oh, yeah.
must be very nice to throw him in the sewer like that.
And it just came and he said, perfect, let's go, let's go.
Oh, yeah. If you could voice any other superhero, who would you want to voice, and what would they sound like?
No, I'd want to voice Cyclops just so I could get closer to Jean. And I would make him a bit, I don't know, just less Captain America-ish.
Right.
This Cyclops, teacher's pet.
Yes.
Anytime, pretty boy.
Yeah.
Now, Professor, you told us, almost like Ted Knight, I know what I'm doing here, and you guys will do it when I say it. That kind of stuff.
He was probably, my least favorite of the X-Men, and it's for that reason, too. He's just such a Boy Scout. And he's just such a Boy Scout.
Oh, I know.
And I just don't.
Yeah, that's what Wolverine called him, too, at different points. At a different part.
I do remember him.
Your Boy Scout's waiting for you. Oh, yeah, he actually says that to Jean. Your Boy Scout's waiting for you. You better not keep him waiting.
I don't really think you would have to voice Cyclops, though, to get closer to Jean. I think Jean always had a thing for Wolverine.
Big time.
I think she just felt like, I don't want to be, maybe it's too much of a risk to, try something with Wolverine. But, I think she definitely.
Yeah, and like that scene, the meme, that famous meme now.
Right.
That I just explained it to a number of fans this time. I said, you realize, because they like that picture of Wolverine in the bed and stuff. I said, you realize the scene that takes place prior to this is that for the first time, Wolverine is just so excited, freaking out, because he's about to kiss Jean. And they're this close together, and Wolverine's just like, I can see it, like he's just shaking. And she's just at the last second just turns away when he thinks she's going to lean in. She's leaning in her kiss and says to him, I have to go, Cyclops needs me. And Wolverine's response is just, so do I. Very quietly, so do I.
Yeah.
So for surely she loves him.
Tell me what it was like to get the call to come back to X-Men 97. Like, did you know it was happening beforehand, or were you surprised that they were redoing?
We knew for the last 2 years before COVID that we were doing Comic-Cons. Because we were all there, like Larry and the writers, and Larry Houston and Eric and Julia Leewald, and giving in their input, you know, how the whole show got to air and all that stuff. Every time that we were at the panel, we would say, you people have started this whole thing. You people, you fans are the best. So keep on Disney. Keep writing in and insisting that they reboot the series, because they were inundated, finally, Disney's, by so many. They said, there has to be something to this, because these fans...
Oh, right, yeah.
These fans are anal. This is just unbelievable. So that was like a big part of like, okay, let's do it. And then when it came through, it was like so exciting. It was like, no, it's like, really this time? Because it was almost like, okay, we may be doing it. It's like, no, now this time it was for sure. And it was so wonderful.
A lot of the voice actors that were originally in the show are coming back, but some of them are not voicing the same characters that they were before. Is there like a reason behind that, or they just wanted to change it up, or?
I have no idea. That's their decision with the new people that are the writers, the new writers.
Right.
And auditioners, or, you know, who are hiring the acts and stuff. Because so far there's myself, Beast, and Rogue are all playing our original roles.
Right, yeah.
And the other ones are not.
I'm also glad that they're not doing like a full reboot. Like they're actually just kind of continuing with the original series.
Which that's what we
I was very excited about that. Because
well, they couldn't touch the old series.
No.
They wouldn't reboot that in their own way.
They would have had a worse...
It was too good. It's too good. You don't
It
mess
really
with that.
is.
And
It really
still stands up today, too.
It's one of those cartoons that, you know, growing
We
up...
don't say cartoon.
Right. I mean, no. Yeah. I mean, you're right.
Animated series.
You're right, because it was a cartoon, but it did not feel like a cartoon.
Yeah.
It felt just like
soap opera.
It felt like an animated comic book.
Yeah.
Is basically what it was.
Previously on X-Men.
Right.
How many animated series start off like that? Like a whatever. A show.
I think basically every episode started out like that too. Like it's just a continuing story like the whole way.
Yeah.
I've heard that Magneto is kind of basically, and you may or may not know these things, but Magneto is kind of basically taking over for Professor X.
We can't we can't even talk about that.
Oh wow.
No, we can't. We're still under what do you call that? Non-disclosure. But it's interesting. What is about to happen, and very interesting what happens to moi. And if you read the comic books, you'd have a good idea what that means. And I just couldn't believe it. I said, you can't do this. What do you do? I said, well, we have to.
And there are so many storylines too, like in the comic books. So like it would be, now I'm gonna have to go home and look through them and figure out which one. Now I've known of several, you know, stories with Wolverine where something bad happens to him. Like I know there's one where Magneto basically rips the adamantium out of his body and stuff like that. But I haven't caught up with the X-Men in a couple of years, so now I got to go home and
you're gonna have
read
to.
them.
Yeah, and you're right. It was Magneto, because I actually read it on someone's post. That Magneto is like takes over for Charles and calls Magneto, if you can believe it, saying my X-Men.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not your X-Men ever. You know, it's like
right.
For sure. Yeah, maybe theirs, not mine.
Now I know. I think back in February you said that you had started already recording for season 2.
Yeah.
Do you know how many seasons they have planned?
No.
Or
it was just announced in San Diego that they were doing season 2, which was, you know, good news for us again.
Right.
And we didn't think that there was that we were ever going to stop after 10. You know,
right.
They don't tell us anything. They just phone and say, okay, you're doing another episode today. All right. Thanks for the warning, bub.
Now, do y'all record together or y'all record separately?
Separately. When we started off the original series, it was all of us, about 5 of us, 6 of us at the same time in the studio in a semicircle,
Right.
It got to be a nightmare for the engineer, you know, with the spilling over into the next person's microphone.
Right.
And we ended up after about 5 episodes going in one by one.
Now, from the recording sessions, do you have any funny or interesting stories that happened between the voice actors that were in there?
Yeah, well, Norm Spencer and I were always at each other's throat because he's Cyclops and I'm Wolverine.
Cyclops!
I know how you feel about it, Wolverine, but...
You know nothing, little man.
And he thinks he's the leader of the X-Men. He's just another pretty boy, teacher's pet.
Right.
And we carried that on sort of outside of the studio. So it came time to, well, first I'll tell you this. So there's an episode we were doing where Wolverine's in a pool hall. And on the TV set is Friends of Humanity, like marching and saying, down with mutants, down. And Wolverine's in his civvies, you know, aside from the mutton chops and the hair and everywhere.
Right, he was in that
He's playing
jacket
pool.
and jeans and
And there's these three like tough looking biker guys or whatever in there. I guess he's playing with, one of them was playing with him. And Wolverine looks up at the screen and says, shut that noise off. And they said, oh, what? You friend of those mutants? You know, and of course, Wolverine's like, oh, here we go again. And they asked, can anyone to do the voices of these other guys? So, because once you do another voice, you get paid half again of what you're being paid for the episode.
Oh, wow.
So everyone was jumping at the chance to do like any one-liner or something. So I had been a singer, as I told you, so I didn't know any of these voiceover people. They were all voiceover people,
right?
And had been for years. And so, does anyone do Jack Nicholson? Norm, in his, you know, like again, Ted Knight. I can do that for you. So he starts reading. He does his best Jack Nicholson, and again, so I was afraid to even say anything because you know we're stepping my boundaries with these voiceover people, and I just said. When he finished, I put my hand up and said, can I give it a whirl? And they said, fine, so I just did whatever. It's like, Aurora, I think we're going to have to get drunk. And what's her name? She says, well, why? What's that? To break the ice? And he said, oh, no, to kill the bug that's up your ass. See,
My
they
gosh.
just went, Cal, you got the gig, you know, for the 2 lines. And Norm just says, oh, piss off.
Oh, my goodness.
But
wow.
Using more vibrant word than
right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
right.
in a nice but not nice. Yeah. But he, you know, we're kidding. Like, just that's the way we got on. Oh, piss off.
I'm sure y'all had some bloopers and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. I wonder. I've never because I don't know if you've ever heard them, but with Thundercats, there was this really famous blooper reel now that's been out for years. Where a lot of the voice actors can be heard saying a lot of choice things. And it is hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
It is hilarious. I would love to hear something like that from X-Men.
Oh, yeah.
If it ever, but I don't think I've ever heard of anything like that being out from X-Men. That would be hilarious. That would get really popular.
There would be enough of those, especially in my part, because Wolverine is, I love that thing that came out about Wolverine, and it's entitled, it's on YouTube, all over the map, and it's like, Wolverine trying to swear, or attempting to swear, and it's all the lines like, you egg-sucking piece of gutter trash, or like,
oh, yeah.
But you know, many times, it was like, just wide, especially when the 5 of us were in there, I would like verbally do whatever Wolverine I would really want her to say. You know, the F-bombs left and right.
Oh, yeah. Now, because of now that you mention it, you've been voicing Wolverine for a really long time.
Yeah.
I feel like you probably know him really well.
Oh, big time, yes.
So did any of the writers, producers, or anything ask you, like, what do you think Wolverine would say in this point and stuff like that?
Yeah. And one instance when they first, right near the beginning, and they had him saying, H-U-H.
Yeah, right.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
And I said, he wouldn't say that, Bob. He would say A, if anything. Like, back off, eh? Back
Right.
off, huh? They said, okay, just drop the A or the huh. Just leave it out. Because they weren't about to go
I
A.
don't feel like he would say, huh.
No. Or A, even.
Yeah, probably not either.
Excuse me.
I feel like he'd probably just yell out, what? Something like that. And what's funny too is because there were two voice actors who voiced Wolverine before you took him on. And they both did Australian accents.
Yeah, no, I know, but that was feeble.
Which is
and
just
stupid. No, it's just so wrong.
And you know, when I first heard that, I went back and checked. Like, I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't know he was Australian.
No, he's not. He's
Right,
Canadian.
he was Canadian from the get-go. And so it was so weird that they let both of them do Australian accents.
It was just wrong.
It was
Back off, bub. But no,
Yeah.
it's just all wrong.
and I didn't like this. Do you remember the sound effects when the claws would come out? It was
No.
more like shh. It was such a soft sound. It didn't even sound like metal.
Yeah.
It was really bad. It's been really nice talking to you.
And you too, Mark. I gotta go. Later.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.